I'm a little different from all the other speakers. Is first of all, I don't know Ken that well. Okay, I've just met him a couple of times. See, Ken, he is up here, you know, like he was president for what, 9 years or something like that. And, you know, we're just not really, I don't know him that well, but Ken doesn't really spend much time with the little people of the Institute. So I really don't know him well, but I did learn a couple things. First of all, I guess I'm the last speaker, which means I just barely made the cut, or, you know, nobody else wanted to do this. I'm not sure which it is. So anyway, Professor Emeritus, Cornell University, and this is Ken's picture right now. And if you go back a little time in past, this is Ken in the beginning, and this is Ken at the end. So you kind of get a indication of how he's progressed over time. Ken, how old are you there, 12? Okay, now the question is, Professor Emeritus, is that how you say that? Emeritus. Emeritus, or mad scientist. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but yeah, I'm going to divide my talk up into 3 areas. First of all, is I'm going to talk about Ken bordering on bummer. Okay, the second thing I'm going to talk about Ken is not so good. And then the third thing is I'm going to talk about Ken the Great. Now, I'm guessing there are several people in this room that may not know what bordering on bummer mean or not so good. Is Daniel tuned in the room by chance? Daniel, stand up, Daniel. Daniel is chair of ACI 301. So if you will take these 2 terms to Daniel, he will throw them on the committee floor. We will talk about them for 2 days, and probably somebody to which you are looking may dominate a part of the conversation and contribute very little to it, but you will get a definition on these terms which you will not be able to understand, but it will be technically correct. After Nick Carino takes a look at it as well. So if you don't know what these means, send them to Daniel and he will work that out for you. So I've always heard, and you know, and I don't do a lot of speaking, but I've always kind of heard that if you got something negative to say about somebody, you need to sandwich it in. So you need to say something good about them, right? And then you need to go ahead and tell it what it is. I mean, you know, it is what it is. And then, you know, you finish with something good. So Ken, you got great looking hair. Okay, now this is bordering on a bummer. So this is Ken as a little and it's a little guy pulling his. Is this your brother? And his brother's name is Poor Tom. And it's a picture of Ken and Tom. Well, Tom suffers from a rare disease called post-ladder stress disorder. Okay, now I met Tom, you know, the first time he was in a halfway house and I happened to be there, and a lot of you understand why I was there, right? And I talked to Tom a little bit, and what happens with Tom is if he sees anybody with a ladder anywhere close around, he will run up to them, he'll grab the ladder, he'll snatch it out of their hand, he'll go to the closest building he can find, he'll throw the ladder up on the wall, he'll take off his shoes, he'll throw them up on the rooftop, and then Tom will go up to the rooftop, kick the ladder off, and stay there, sometimes for days and weeks at a time. Now, that's all I'm going to say about this, because this is not my story to tell. This is poor Tom's story to tell. But I will tell you this. If you can get Tom and Ken together, and maybe somebody of a little catalyst involved with it, that will be better than any comedy show you have ever been to in your entire life. So anyway, that's the story of that. I'm not going to get into those details. The other one is I got to set Mr. Jones straight, okay? Now, there's been a lot of talk about this, and this is the one that's not so good. And so this is really the story, a couple of guys in their coffee, or more commonly called the coffee spill heard around the world. So kind of what happened is I'd got this brand new cup, and this thing was expensive. And where's Cecil at? Did you run out, Cecil? Cecil. Okay, Cecil, first of all, I did not buy this cup to keep coffee hot. I bought this cup so I wouldn't spill it. And it works perfectly fine when it doesn't get sabotaged. So, you know, I got this cup here, and I filled up my coffee, and I went through my normal tightening regime where I tighten the lid so that I do not get any spillage. So this is what you always do. You fill up your coffee cup, and then you tighten it down, torque it down. And I do the typical redneck garage tighten it. I tighten it up till it ring off the top, then I back off a half a turn. So, so I tighten it up. So, I tested it, pressure tested it, and this cup, by the way, is military grade. So, no way this could be a problem. All right, so here's the background. We're at the convention, I believe it's 2010. I just filled up my new cup, had my coffee, going through my normal lid tightening. I showed you how I did that. And I noticed Ken Hobart. I didn't know Ken very well at that time. He was kind of over in the corner. And, he kind of had this weird look on his face. Kind of, that's the picture we got from a camera. I'll tell you about how we got that later. And he was looking at my cup and kind of creeping over a little bit. I was kind of a little worried about maybe something wrong. And so then he asked if the cup was really spill-proof. And I said, sure it is, man. I turned it upside down, shook it. Nothing came out. Perfect. And then the next thing I had, he said, well, can I hold it? I said, sure, you can hold it. So I handed it to him, and then all of a sudden he kind of turned his back to me a little bit. I really didn't understand why he would do that. He turned his back to me, kind of like he was hiding something or trying to do something as a part of this. And then he turned back around, and he turned it upside down and says, your cup's not spill-proof. Now, Cecil talked about, he probably about 2 drops of coffee on his trousers, very little, very small amount. Very small amount of coffee. And as far as the value of them, I did feel bad. I said, oh my gosh, what has he done? I offered to get them dry cleaned. And Deb was there, and she said, you don't want to get them dry cleaned. He bought them for $2 at the Goodwill store 8 years ago. Okay. But I said, it's okay, I'll get it done. And Ken was fuming. And then the next thing happened, he collapsed on the floor. And he's laying on the floor, he's kicking. And then all of a sudden, the hotel went into emergency shutdown protocol. So everything shut down, doors locked. Now, as a result of that, King's down there, and all of a sudden, there's ambulance, there's police. And here they are carrying Ken out on this part area here. Now, I'm going to tell you, Ken, if it had been this hotel, and they'd have came in the lobby, and we're back here, they'd have never got to you. Okay. By the time they went up and down a couple times, they would have no idea where they are. And as a part of this, you'd still be laying there today. And so, this becomes just very serious. So, our leader's down, our president's down. Okay, so the exec committee went straight in to a meeting to decide what we're going to do because, we're mourning what appears to be a serious injury and the loss of our great leader, president. So they decided to shut down all the activities for 5 minutes. Okay, so they shut down everything for 5 minutes because, ACL work is way too more important. We can get another president, we got a vice president, so don't worry about that. So they shut everything down for 5 minutes, so what can we do as a part of that? And then the legal notices. 2 days later. 2 days later, I get those legal notices, and it says, received notices from a team of lawyers. Now, what really got me is I'm responsible for Ken Hover's physical, which I could possibly see the 2 drops might have been a little warm, but the mental one really got me. How could I be responsible for Ken Hover's mental and his medical bills? And so, this is, if you look at this law group up here, they're pretty good at making up stuff and coming up with things and crazy things like that. They got this dude OJ off as a part of this. So, this is a top loose thing. So then, what am I going to do? So I get this picture right away of Ken in a big-time hospital. They wouldn't tell me where it was, and he's in surgery. If you notice, there's several surgeons around, and they're trying to work on him to save him. So this is what I think. This is what's happening. And then I get this picture of him. All right? And this is a picture of him right here. And then the big thing they said is diagnosis, Ken Hover will never be able to toss another piece of candy. US $1 billion. And so, I gave that to Barbara, my wife, in the back, and she said, which quarter do they want? We got about 2 quarters. So I became instantly broke, and now I'm forced to work for eternity to pay off my bills. Now, Michelle, Yeah, I know things is bad, but I promise you, I will not come to a 301 meeting dressed like that. Because I don't wear ties anymore. Okay, so, that's where we're at. I'm broke. I don't know what to do. So, I thought about it for a little bit, and then I remembered I knew an attorney. So I said, well, Ken's got these guys. Let me get my attorney involved in there. So, I went to his office, and you guys may know this gentleman. He's standing in the back, Jeff Coleman. So Jeff kind of looked at this, and he said, Calvin, I kind of think that there's something wrong with this around here, and I kind of think there might not be only Ken involved with this, but he may have a couple of accomplices involved with this, trying to spread this story. So he said, let me get to work on this. So we did. He brought up his investigators. And so he brought up his investigators, and we start doing some real heavy background work. So then the first thing we figured out is Ken never went to the big hospital. He, in essence, went to a movie set and got on a MASH helicopter, and then his surgeon was Hawkeye Pierce. So he's, in essence, trying to skew things a little bit. So Hawkeye kind of worked on him for a little bit. So we kind of knew things weren't good there. And then we came up with the pictures that we got this. Now, I mentioned that Ken turned his back. And Cecil promptly said there was no witnesses. But our investigators found out on the 40th floor of the building across the street, somebody took a snapshot which ricocheted off the glass, and then they developed these pictures as a result of this. So if you look at this, look there, does that not look like, look at that last one right there. I'm going to get you, guy. Okay. So he took off the lid, and then that was a part of it. And then we talked about his injuries. So then Jeff and his investigators come up 3 days later, Ken playing softball. And then we found out a little later that Ken is spending time with his grandkids as a part of this. So kind of what we figured out real quick is this whole thing that Ken and his accomplices come up with was just really a great big sham. So there was really nothing to this other than just somebody trying to milk the poor guy for a little bit of money. All right, now, the other part I want to point out to you is we went into this legal battle. It lasted 14 years. It ended up with me making a huge financial contribution. Now, we had him dead to rights, but you may or may not know this, but Ken is extremely wealthy. He has got probably just a touch less than $50 million, and he's got that scattered out in somewhere on 1 to 3 or 4 continents. I don't know how many. So he's extremely wealthy. So we couldn't, we just couldn't keep it up. So we made a settlement. But part of our agreement is Ken cannot speak, talk, write, text, email, carve words on pictures of any surfaces, carrier pigeons, or any form of communication, collaboration which currently exists or may exist in the future, present, or past. So this ended the case with habeas corpus. So this is over, and we did find out some evidence that I wasn't going to bring up, but there was a note in Ken's hand that was caught by this. It said, when Calvin McCall spills coffee on me, call this number. And it was a 919 area code. That's all I know. That's all we could get. Hey, Cecil, what's your area code? Yeah, well, that's true. Okay, the other thing I think is of interest, this is a list of all of the speakers who are here. Okay? Do you notice someone who is missing? A past president. Do you see Jeff Coleman's name on this right here? So as a result of Jeff representing me in this, he just got blackballed in the band for this. So, I didn't go through all of the death threats I got as a part of this. So this is the end of that story. And this is, to the best of my ability, with the documentation, records, and record keeping we have, the hours and months of deposition, this is what we've learned. So that's the end. That's the true story of the coffee spill. Now I'm going to change and talk about the other side of Ken, because, Ken's really pretty good most of the time. So Ken is really a great person. He is one of the presidents from Ohio. He has got some pretty good, these were pretty good presidents, weren't they, Ken? Most of them, I don't know. So, this is it. But I'm going to give you a bit of history about Ken. The first time I met him was at a conference in Virginia. At that time, I can't remember the exact time, but I had no idea who Ken Hover was. I couldn't match a name and a face. I knew the name, but I had no idea who he was. So he was speaking, and he was speaking on his favorite course, concrete. So that's what he's talking about, concrete. And the first slide he puts up, and I'll show you that in a minute, but it's something that I've kind of used from time to time. So here's this guy, no idea who he is, and he puts this slide. This is the first impression I got of Ken Hover. So this says a technical meeting in which experienced professionals in attendance are already well versed in the subject matter presented by speakers. So he goes through and he explains that. So kind of what he's saying is you guys out there know a whole lot more about this than I do. Now, he's partially correct in one thing. Concrete is made with the materials we have in our specific area. And what is done in Virginia is different from what's done in Ithaca, New York. But there's a lot, but it's an understanding of the differences in concrete. Then the next part of this is an expert from out of town. Now, he's an expert from out of town, but he does have a lot of passion for what he's talking about. And then the last two words, I think, describes him pretty cleanly. Uh-oh. I'm having technical difficulties. Cecil, have you messed this up? Okay, Greek or nerd?
You might have run out of battery, I don't know.
Okay.
You just let me know what you need, I'll take care of it.
Okay. I'll do it.
Okay.
Okay, so Greek or nerd, so that's it. So that's the first time, that I met Ken. He has this presentation. He talks a whole lot about this. He talks a lot about, concrete. He uses candy. This was amazing to me. He's using candy to illustrate these points, and he's doing it in such a fashion that everybody's watching him, everybody's looking. So if I go to a session, I try to sit close to the front, mainly because I'm old and I can't see in here. But I typically look around at the crowd. If you're looking around at the crowd, you know whether they're engaged or not. I mean, we didn't play on our phones back then. We didn't have them. But everybody is engaged with this. So, this guy's doing a fantastic job. So I said, this is the absolute best concrete speaker I have ever heard. He is telling the facts. He's talking to the people so we can understand it. He has the ability to talk to the CEO, or he's got the ability to talk to the iron worker. And there's very few people who have that ability to do both and do it well. So we did that. The second time was kind of ironic. The second time is, and this was, I think this was the late 80s, early 90s maybe, but I was presented with Speaker of the Year award. And I know, I paid people off. At that time, it was presented at a student lunches, and that's where I first heard about Deb. So, I'm there, and, you're really kind of humbled, and I don't get humbled very easy, because here I am getting this award for being the Speaker of the Year, and probably one of the best, if not the best speaker in the concrete industry is talking about and giving a speech and talking about and awarding me this award. And so that was truly humbling. So he did a great presentation, and one of the things I learned then, Ken, I don't know how to tell you this, but you said it, you don't know much, and Deb is way smarter than you. That was the crux of that. So, I learned about Deb, and then I came up and, to congratulate you after the talk. And again, fantastic, great job, using visuals, looked around the room again, everybody's engaged. And the thing he said to me was, do you think they really got the message? Because, if you go to one of his seminars, he's very theatrical. He's engaging the people. He's got all these various things he's doing this. I said, do you really think they got the message, or do you think they just kind of got lost in the presentation of it? And I told them beyond a shadow of a doubt, they got the message. The way you presented this and how you communicated with them was just tremendous. Well, the third time is I needed a favor. So for some dumb reason, not known to me now, I agreed to chair 301. And at that time, we were getting ready to reorganize the committee. We were going to subcommittees, and so I needed subcommittee chair people. So, you know, one of the first things, if you're a chairman, what do you want to do? You want to surround yourself with people way smarter than you, right? So I need a subcommittee chair. So who do you think about? So I thought about Ken. So I went to Ken, and kind of convinced him with blackmail and hush money to take over sections 4 and 5, which has to do with producing concrete and placing concrete. So he led that charge until he kind of bailed out on me, because then he wanted to become president of ACI. So he got tired of my totalitarian rule of the subcommittee chair, so he became president so he could boss me around. But so, you know, one of the things I would do is I would kind of bounce around to the subcommittees just to see what was being said. So I was sitting in the subcommittee one day, and at that time, one of the things we debated very heavily is, what is the slump of concrete? What should it be? So we had something like, unless otherwise specified, the maximum slump of concrete shall be 4 inches unless you do these other things. Well, so Ken's talking about this, and we're talking about it at the committee, and there's a lot of conversation, and Ken says something that's very important. Slump is a measurement of slump. Now that sounds like it's corny, but that is a very true statement, because slump, we all agree, it doesn't tell you much about workability. It doesn't tell you much about finishability. It has no idea how much water's in the concrete. But what it is a measurement of slump. So if you think through that, if you're on a project and the trucks are coming in, they're all at about the same slump. No matter if it's low or high, good things are happening. If you're on that same project and the first one comes in at 2, the next one comes in at an 8, the next one comes in at a 9, the next one comes in at 2, you got a problem. Now that was a very simple statement, but when you think through what he just said, it made a tremendous amount of difference on the value of slump. Okay, so who is Ken Over? Now we've had a lot of talking about this. And first of all, I got to say this. I get to introduce Ken. So, you know, me being the last victim, I get to introduce Ken. And I'm going to do part of that right now as we go through some things about who Ken is. Because if I listed all of his resume, all of his attributes, we would be here until 2:30 in the morning. So who is he? Well, first of all, if you know him, you most likely understand all of the things I'm getting ready to tell you. But first of all, his reputation and character are respected by all that know him. If Ken Hover says something, if he says he will do something for you, it will happen. Okay? You don't need to worry about it. He will tell you the truth to the best of his ability. If he does not know, he will tell you, I don't know. Now that may seem like a simple thing, but gee, what does that mean? It's very important if you talk to people and you ask for something, provide a conversation, that you get adequate information. He's one of the most knowledgeable individuals in concrete. Now, Ken is split. First of all, you know, I think Jim said, you know, he had a stint as a contractor. So he's a contractor, he's working in 67 at about that time period, and at that time, water control slump. So he's working in the field as a contractor. He's got to make things go. So he's an inspector. But one of the things is he's realistic. So if you look at a lot of the stuff he's done, a lot of the research he's done, it kind of relates to concrete being placed. It kind of relates to what happens to concrete in the field. We can do stuff in the laboratory. If we do stuff in the laboratory, by the time the concrete is 8 minutes old, the tests are done. But when you get to the field, so a lot of the things he's done provide the realistic part of this. So the theoretical is important, but I'm a believer it doesn't matter how good it is. If you can't place it, it's worthless. So he's done a lot of stuff with the realistic. If you look at him, he's a very nice person. He's cheerful. You know, you can kind of tell when somebody is extremely knowledgeable. They don't tout their knowledge. It's pretty obvious if you spend about 3 seconds talking to Ken, you will understand that he is a very knowledgeable person, but yet he's very humble. He's willing to share. He's willing to take time to talk to you about various things. as a part of this. Okay. Now, for whatever reason, some people think I talk too much in committees. I don't know where they get that idea. Ken, on the other hand, he only speaks when he has something to say. And typically what he looks for is a win-win situation. So he's looking for the good of the group. And the other part is I figured this out, and I may have known Ken a little bit better than I first indicated. It's kind of coming back to me a little bit. His greatest asset is, like many of us, is his wife, Deb. She's not only smarter, she's prettier, and she does boss him around pretty effectively. I'm truly proud to call him a colleague and a friend. He cares about his students. Now, I've had the privilege to meet several of his students. One of them did a stint in Charlotte last year, so I got to meet him and got to know him very personally. But his students really think a lot of Ken. When you talk to his students and you talk about how they feel about him, you'll find out quickly. So this is something we pulled out at this group here. He's a very awesome lecturer. He explains things well. So I'm of the opinion that if you're a college student and you're lucky enough to have Ken as your professor, you're lucky enough. I mean, you won't get a better person. The ability to explain concrete properties in a manner that everybody will understand, that's important. It's important to know your audience. It's important to know who you're talking to. If you're talking to the CEO, all he cares about is what it costs. If you're talking to the finisher, he wants to know when it's going to set up and how do I know I'm not going to get crusty. And if you're talking to the concrete producer, it's a whole set of things. So they cover the properties that's really related to people using the material. And as I said, I'm a firm believer. I don't care how good it is. If you can't place it, it doesn't matter. If you can't finish it, it doesn't matter. So he's good at working through those things, which a lot of people may say, wow, that's no big deal. We can do that all the time. It's not. Concrete is a very complex material, and how it responds to ambient conditions, he's changed. Now, he uses candy to demonstrate, among other things, his bars. But what I found out recently, that candy is not really his favorite snack. His favorite snack is Doritos. So, Ken, I'm giving you a pack of Doritos. Now, I want you to know, I started this, just want you to know, there's a couple things I want to say. You're going to get them, don't worry about it. I mean, good gosh. If you could see, his eyes are bigger than hubcaps. I want you to know a couple things. I didn't get you a big bag because of a couple reasons. One, because I'm broke. As a result of the 14 years of litigation, I'm totally broke. The other one is I also happen to know is Deb does not like for you to have Doritos because she doesn't think they're good for you, which probably means you don't have a whole lot of life insurance. So I just got you a small bag. You're so welcome. Okay.
Thank you.
Now check the expiration date. Okay. So that's his favorite snack, and if you smart, you know how to do stuff on the computer, you will find HCI staff revolted and threw tons of that at him at one of the meetings. Okay, now, Ken, this is impressive to me. Okay, and I got this online. I don't know how accurate or up to date it is, but based on this, he's done 69 research projects. That is impressive to me. He's got 1,605 citations, 15,000 plus reads. So, in addition to that, he's had time to do other things. If you look at some of the pictures with his family, he did do one thing that I consider to be, he really, really did not treat his younger daughter very well. He let her go to Wake Forest. Okay. But, so that's just some of his accomplishments. So this is his contribution. Now, Ken, you're a researcher, right? You use candy a lot. That's you. Are these your grandkids?
One daughter and two grandkids.
Okay, I want to talk to you about a couple things. Ken, this wagon does not meet OSHA standards. Okay, just wanted to let you know that right off the bat. Okay, so let me get back to the part. So, you're a researcher. Now, many of you, first of all, I'm kind of looking around this room. It looks like several of you guys may be old, but some of you are young. Everybody know what this is? This is a Tootsie Roll Pop, okay? It's a Tootsie Roll Pop. And Ken, you've made a lot of points with candy through your years, okay? So one of the things that we do not know, this has been an ongoing issue for years, is how many licks does it take to get through a Tootsie Roll Pop? So how long does it take the hard candy to dissolve before you get to the chewy fudge? So nobody knows that. Because what happens is people start on this, and then they get partially the way through, then they bite through it. So we don't know. So Ken, you're retired. I know you don't have a lot of time, so here's my thing. I'm going to give you this right here. And what I want you to do with this is take this as I won't turn it upside down. If I do, I'll spill out all of you. I want you to take this, and I want you to take this research project, and when we meet again, I want you to determine and let me know how long it takes to dissolve that hard shell.
We will work on that.
Okay, I don't want you to work on it, I want you to do it. Okay, so we want to know how long it takes to do this as part of that. And, by the way, you don't need to worry about Deb's stuff. She'll understand. Okay, so that's kind of it. I think I've cleared up a lot of things. There's a dark side to Ken about his brother. There's a shamboos he made with the coffee. But all in all, he's really a great person, and we're very fortunate to have him in ACI. I consider him a friend, a mentor, a colleague. So without further ado, Ken, you are up. And remember, you can say anything you want to say, but you can't talk about the coffee. Jeff Coleman's in the back. He will, hit you with a habeas coffee again. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.